Hey Mexicans, welcome back to this new video where today we're going to be looking at a scenario where all the Cold War alliances come into the modern world. So we have the square team with the old empire, the America, Norway, and Iberia, and also the Farmers Union. Then we have the cross team with Russia, its Central Asian allies, and Texas, along with Western Africa. Then we have the circle team, which has its Tibet, China, Xinjiang, and Mexico. And well, yeah, we're gonna be looking at that scenario. All right. So first up, we have the Treaty of China. Nope, that's Africa. Get the fuck off my computer. Sorry, there's a fly on my computer. Anyway, first up, the Treaty of China. This will decide the fate of what remains of China, which is not. If we look at the city map, the city map, the capital of China, Beijing, is under the Chinese country here, and there are a couple cities left, but it's not really sustainable on its own without the capital or China itself. So, in the Treaty of China, there will be a line splitting up what remains of China. Tibet will get this much of itself. And then what remains of China will be annexed by the China of WICSO. After the Treaty of China, though, the Circle Alliance doesn't really like want to expand anymore, like into like Manchuria and all that, because they're not really that expansionist compared to like the cross team or the square team. Like the circle team's pretty much peaceful when it comes to expansion. So yeah. As for what remains of these countries over here, Iran is not really sustainable, and it joins the puppet state. Afghanistan and Pakistan aren't sustainable because Islamabad is under Tibet, and Kabul is under this Georgian country. I would honestly probably call it either. I would probably call it Tajikistan, and then this would be Kyrgyzstan. But yeah, Afghanistan doesn't really sustain itself on its own. India didn't really lose too much land as they still got New Delhi. The only thing they lost is Kashmir, but even then. Nepal Nepal can like it still has its capital and stuff, but this area is split from the rest of Nepal, so it would probably not last long. And honestly, as a matter of fact, Nepal as a whole has been weakened by Tibet. That pretty much ends India, though. They've expanded quite a bit. So yeah, kind of looks like Lime India. No, kind of looks like Gray India from WICSO. Basically takes up the same borders except for this eastern part. If you look at this map, yeah, basically the same borders except the eastern part. The eastern part is still under India, and it's not Bengal. Now China, meanwhile, has been taken over, has been split up between Tibet and this China. As for Sudan, it's just not really that sustainable. It will join this Sudan because it can't really last long on its own, and I'm gonna be for real. If it could last long, then it would have its capital, but Sudan here just doesn't last long. And with that out the way, we also have to take account for these little pockets of Eritrea that still exist. Yeah, if I'm gonna be for real, these pockets aren't really gonna last long either, as the old empire kind of invades them, because they're not really gonna be able to sustain well on their own anyway. They're either gonna have to join the old empire, or remain independent but basically collapse, which really that doesn't really make sense. So yeah. And then as for this part of Chad, it got cut off from the rest of Chad. So there's some. So this part gets. So this part becomes a part of the old empire. And then as for these areas, I'm really gonna be for real here. These won't last long either. So, what remains of this... Mali... What remains of Mali... Would it join the... I think it would make sense if it joined the West Africans. Yeah, there it is then. As for these remaining bits of land that can't sustain well on their own, they all pretty much just go over to the orange team. There might be some West African countries that would want to join this union basically later. But yeah, this part of Mali, Azawad, joins with the rest of West Africa. This looks good. Then Spain itself kind of ceases to exist as Catalonia declares independence, and the West Africans kind of set up something from WICSO itself. Yeah, they set up the Dark Cyan team. So yeah, now we have another country that came into here from WICSO. They won't join the... They will probably end up joining the Crosses eventually. If they... Actually, no, they would probably remain neutral. But, yeah. Anyway. As for what remains of Finland and stuff, it gets split up between Russia and Norway. Norway gets the rest of Sweden, but Russia gets the rest of what remains of modern, like our world's Norway, and Finland and Kola. So yeah, I would say this is a fair split. This Norway might realize that pocket was what remained of this world's Norway, and they might want to reconquer it. Maybe. I don't know about that. They probably would want to reconquer this. They probably would want to conquer this, though. They really still want to kick the Russians out of that area. But yeah. As for Russia itself, I'm gonna be for real. It doesn't really want to expand much into this area. It will kind of finish off what remains in these parts. No, I did say these parts because Czechia still exists, and a majority of it too. They will kind of take over the Czechian parts that kind of aren't connected with the rest of Czechia. As it's not like they can hold on to those anyway. But they don't want the rest of Czechia. No. As for the Farmers Union, they will expand it to Slovakia and Hungary. All Slovakia has is their capital, but Hungary just doesn't have anything of value. So it just makes sense here. And in the old empire, the Farmers Union decided to split up the Balkans between themselves. So this area will be going to the Farmers Union. They will get some Adriatic coast, too. That's a pretty good expansion. And we have the old empire wrapping up their expansion in the Balkans here, with what remains of Serbia, Montenegro, and then all of Kosovo and stuff, and Albania. Yup, there you go. Don't the borders look so much better? Yeah, now the Farmers Union kind of looks cool, actually. Mix of modern borders and WICSO borders. It's pretty good. Then we will focus on Siberia, which honestly just kind of itself joins Russia. And now Russia fully conquers Siberia. But wait. The problem with China right now is they don't want to expand within these lands. Russia also doesn't want to expand within these lands. So who does? Japan unites with South Korea. They've invaded North Korea. And then they basically just took this land for themselves. So Manchuria goes to them. Parts of Mongolia also go. And all that remains is this part. Which will just go to Russia because, I mean, China doesn't want it. It has nothing to go to but Russia here. As China doesn't want it, and Japan doesn't really access it good enough to really administer it. So yeah, that, and we're doing with this bit of Mongolia, which would also go to the Russians, due to not having any other choice. Now that the Japanese Empire is back in its best form too. I think eventually they might join an alliance. Not now though. Eventually. But yeah, now we have the remains of like the U.S., which was broken up into the several states for the sake of this scenario, and then we also have Mexico. But yeah, first stop. There are some borders I completely forgot to redraw, so yeah, that's first stop. And then I think this one should also kind of, yep. Now, as for what remains, I'm gonna be for real. Some of these states are weak. Pretty weak. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of these states would want to just I think all these states would just want to rejoin the U.S. Except this isn't the U.S. This is a different. This is the equivalent of the U.S. and WICSO. But they joined that because they honestly don't have any other choice. They stayed independent, they'd be weak as hell. So yeah, with that, unity in the U.S., unity in America is now high as hell. Now America itself just looks like the U.S. I'm gonna go ahead and centralize this square now. Oh, shoot, wrong layer. Shit. Probably make much more sense if I centralize this square around this area. Yeah, there. That's better. Welcome to the new United U.S., where its capital is South Carolina instead of, where its capital is in Carolina instead of D.C. Yeah, well, I've seen worse. Also, as for what remains in Mexico, I'm gonna be for real, that doesn't last long. Texas just gobbles up this. And then what is essentially Mexico down here takes over the Yucatan and then the rest of Guatemala. Belize is still strong enough to kind of remain on its own. It didn't really lose that much land. I mean, they were considering it though, but so yeah, now the Americas have consolidated themselves. So yeah, what's left here? Not much really. China, the circle team doesn't really want to expand. Russia solidified itself in Poland and Finland. Japan made its empire again. And then I guess we could do Africa now, yeah. So the old empire sends an ultimatum to Niger and Chad. They accept the ultimatum and they ultimately join this puppet state here, which makes sense as why would they want to fight a war against basically the old empire is basically just all the Middle East. No, literally. Like, if you draw a line, this is the Middle East. Because Egypt counts. Then we have all of Arabia. Then we have Iran. Which then goes into the Caucasus. And then it stops at Thrace. That's the Middle East. And then it just has extra lands in Europe. More lands in what is essentially beyond the Middle East in Africa. So like Egypt is a part of Africa, but it's like region wise it's still the Middle East. And then past this is just it's what if like the old empire is just basically a Middle Eastern empire, give or take some lands outside of it. Like it has bits of lands in Russia and stuff, but yeah, Middle Eastern empire. That's pretty much the gist of it. And it's very consolidated around this area, as the red team and blue team used to be separate here. And this was the red team and this was the blue team, give or take. And then we had some lands that were independent here, but for the most part, if we split up these two, the borders would definitely look a little something like this. Probably a little bit more like this because, like, I mean, there would probably be some fixing up of stuff because they own extra lands in Eritrea and stuff, so the blue team would probably cut off much of the Eritrea stuff. Adizz never really discussed how the red and blue team kind of looked after they've expanded quite this much. They never really did. I don't think they really needed to, but you know. Yeah. Anyway, be sure to look out for part 2 as I'm going to make these alliances go to war with each other like they have. This would be World War III again, except with all the alliances. So, square team, cross team, circle team, yeah, they're all going to go to war again. So yeah, peace out.